Hey there! Welcome to SkyGems Academy podcast. At SkyGems Academy, our vision is to build a community of new generation leaders with strong core values, high level of self-awareness, high self-worth, and passionate individuals who will give back to the community and the environment. We are focused on delivering high-quality blended online learning of 21st century life skills delivered and taught online, practiced and perfected offline. Our philosophy is to inspire, educate, and nurture. We work towards inspiring and igniting sparks. We listen, we coach, we fine-tune and accelerate the mastery of 21st century life skills for various age groups. Our blended learning programs are curated from the early years to above 60 years old, as we believe in providing high-quality, lifelong learning for everyone. SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1: How COVID-19 Transformed the Education Industry. We will take you inside the minds and behind the scenes of 40 exclusive leaders and educators in the education industry. We've interviewed 40 exclusive educators and leaders in the education industry worldwide, starting with China, where the pandemic initially started. You will hear from the leaders in the education industry sharing candidly their views on the possible changes that will take place in the education industry post-COVID-19. Be sure to tune in to SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1 to listen and learn from the amazing stories, experiences shared, challenges faced, and techniques used by educators in different cities and countries to adapt and overcome their challenges personally as well as professionally in their respective roles in the education industry during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, let's dive into SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1. Introducing to you our host, Alyssa.
Hey guys, it's Alyssa. Hope everyone is keeping well. SkyGems Academy Podcast is a passion project that my team and I kicked off in early 2020. As we are all facing the unprecedented events and experiences impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, we find that there is an urgent need to unite the global community of educators and leaders to progress forward together. Our main objective is to create a platform for all global leaders and global communities to come together to document these historic moments for our future generations. SkyGems Academy Podcast is a platform for everyone from all around the world to share, listen, learn, communicate, collaborate, and come together to network and help one another to pull through this very challenging period that has impacted the global community. In each episode of SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1, How COVID-19 Transformed the Education Industry, you will find yourself immersed and engaged in in-depth discussions and thought leadership in various aspects of education, technology, humanity, diversity, disparity, and collaborations in the education space. We are very grateful and sincerely appreciate each and every one of you who has motivated us, encouraged us, contributed in your own very special ways, especially our 40 exclusive guest speakers from all around the world. A big thank you to all and a big shout out to all of you. SkyGems Academy Podcast 13th speaker is Kim Green, now based in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Kim is currently the head of school at International School, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Prior to this role, Kim was the director at Qatar Academy, Sidra in Doha, Qatar. Kim is passionate about building authentic frameworks for professional learning, leadership development, and removing linear roles and responsibilities in education. She believes that leadership networks that synergistically deploy agile methodologies and courageously take risks to positively impact well-being and learning outcomes ultimately unlock human potential, collective intelligence, collective efficacy, enabling innovation to embed into the fabric of the school community. I think a lot of people who have tried out online classes, for some of them, they had gone to find that that's the way of doing things going forward, and they want to carry on to a greater extent, said Kim. Now, I am pleased to introduce to you and present to you Kim Green. Today, we have the honor and pleasure to have Miss Kim Green, based in Qatar right now, waiting to talk to us all to share with us the ideas. Hi, Kim. Welcome to the show. Welcome to SkyGems Podcast. It's an honor and pleasure to have you with us.
Hi, it's absolutely fabulous to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Like you've just said, my name is Kim and I'm currently the director at Qatar Academy Sidra here in Doha, Qatar. The school that I work for is a 3-program IB school and it's part of the Qatar Foundation. Originally, I'm a New Zealander. I spent the first few years of my teaching career in New Zealand. And then my journey took me to Laos, to Bangladesh, and then brought me here to Qatar. And all of those experiences have been absolutely incredible. As I look forward to next school year, my journey is going to be taking me to Vietnam, where I'll be taking on the head of school role at the International School of Ho Chi Minh City. Another very exciting adventure.
Indeed, exciting journey that you have and more to come in front of you. Congratulations, Kim. And thank you for sharing and introducing yourself. Well, thank you for joining us at SkyGems Podcast. Today, we're going to go through some of the critical areas that we are all going through right now in the pandemic of COVID-19. We'd like to hear from you, Kim. How do you feel about the current situation of COVID-19 pandemic?
It's certainly a very interesting time globally. I personally feel that it's an opportunity that has been presented to us humanity for us to be able to really reset and realign what it is that we believe in and what we value. As a leader of a K-12 IB World School, it's given and continues to give us very rich real-world opportunities to be able to open up creativity, to connect learning to real-world context, to provide students opportunities to problem solve. And I think it's, from my personal perspective, an event that whilst I know is devastating for many, many people globally, it's also an event where I think we should have a lot of optimism about, an event where we can embrace with our heart the challenges, but also look forward to the riches that can come out of the learnings of this experience.
That is really true. With any crisis, there are opportunities. Is how we put our mind and hearts into it to embrace that change, to make the most out of it. So very well said there, Kim. Thank you for that. What are the challenges that you have faced during this period?
Well, as you can imagine, in a K-12 context, there are multiple challenges which COVID-19 has presented us with. Challenges to learning, challenges to assessment, challenges around the well-being of our communities, technological challenges, and also challenges related to collaboration and communication. So a little bit more specifically, when I think about learning, COVID-19 presented us with a scenario where in a very short time frame with very little notice, our school environment transitioned from being in a face-to-face on-campus model to being in a continuous learning distance model delivered via online tools. And this raised or brought about a number of areas of awareness for us, which were challenging for our students, challenging for our teachers, and also challenging for our parents. What were the learning expectations? How could we make sure that curriculum was still rigorous whilst making sure that we had the right support for our students? How could we make sure that the information and the learning expectations were simple and clear so that our parent community were best able to support their children at home as they had suddenly transitioned themselves into being that facilitator of learning in the home? How could we make sure that our learning opportunities we were providing to our students were engaging? How could we make sure that we could still empower students when we weren't necessarily in the same physical space with them? How could we make sure that we still were able to celebrate community, bringing different groups together, celebrating learning and helping build the self-efficacy of our student population? When I think of assessment, challenges around assessment in terms of how could we or what did we need to consider in terms of standardized assessment, what kinds of gaps were going to be created in the data that we keep as schools, what is authentic and meaningful assessment when it's in a distance learning model, and how could we support our teachers with different strategies so that they would be able to really understand and gain evidence of student understanding and learning. One of the key underpinning challenges for us in our community and our focus for us was around the well-being of all of our members of our community, our parents, our teachers, and our students. When we made that transition into continuous learning, distance learning model, we were actually very fortunate because we had seen the wave of COVID moving, and we'd already taken our faculty through professional learning and our students through a distance learning drill. So they had engaged in online learning at school and practiced, but nothing really prepares you for that overnight notification when suddenly students are at home and you're starting to rebuild your practices to get all of those intricacies working together. So well-being was one of our great challenges. We wanted to make sure that we had safeguarding practices very well in place for working in a fully digital environment. And we also wanted to make sure that our parents were okay, knowing that they were going to be the people who needed to be strong for our youth and to be the people who were going to need to facilitate the transition for their children. One of our greatest priorities was to make sure that we could check in on our parents and make sure that they were in a strong and great place. And then, of course, launching straight into a digital environment, every family, every child had different challenges with technology.
Surely.
We started with some platforms, and those platforms that we had trained in modified as we went through the journey. So we then, in the remote context, ended up retraining our community in a new video conferencing platform. And then collaboration and communication was a challenge. How do you recreate those informal opportunities you have in a school campus to be able to have those great meaningful conversations about learning? And how did we ensure that we brought everybody into the creative process to make sure that teaching and learning was meaningful, that the practices that we were deploying in a remote environment were effective and not overburdening our community? And how could we manage workload for our students and for our teachers and leverage effective communication and collaboration to make sure that that balance was there for them? So a lot of challenges. I think that's a snapshot of a few of them. I think each day was an interesting challenge.
Thank you for sharing that level of detail of the challenges that you faced. And as you say correctly, every day is a different set of challenges that we personally will face or at professional level. So really appreciate that reality that you are sharing with us, as well as the transparency. So thank you, Kim, for that. With all those challenges that you just mentioned, how did you overcome those challenges? What changes do you have to make to adapt?
It's a really interesting question. I think we made many changes. I think the part that I would share first would be around the rate and pace that we needed to respond. Often, I think in our school environments, we take a lot of time to very carefully evaluate implications of different changes that we want to make and how we're going to adapt. And this was a situation where we had to be very agile and we had to move very fast. So we were regularly talking with our extended leadership team. We were regularly evaluating where we were in time and place. And one of the pieces that we did that helped us with the changes that we made was that we checked in with our faculty on a daily basis. And every morning they provided us with feedback which was related to their successes, their challenges, the things that they needed help with, and then student learning or celebrations they wanted to share. That really helped guide us as a leadership team to know where the pressure points were for our faculty, where the pressure points were for our parents and our students, and then to be able to respond. So we worked in a series of very fast, short sprints, implementing a practice, quickly evaluating it, gaining feedback from parents, students, and teachers, and then making adaptations as we needed. So those adaptations, when I reflect on them, really fall across 4 domains. One domain was the pedagogical mindset of our faculty. The second domain was the well-being of our community. The third domain was the learning environment that we were working in. And then the fourth domain was collaboration. And each of those domains we adapted, but we adapted them based on 4 principles, and they were 4 C's. We adapted them based on a principle of consistency, that whatever we implemented and however we adapted, we would be adapting and implementing across grades, subjects, and divisions of the school, that we would be making sure that there was evidence of that working to be able to support the consistency, that there'd be consistency in our planning documentation, in our communication, and in how we approached assessment. The second principle that we worked off was compromise, that all of the adaptations that we were making were going to require compromise. Compromises around what we would normally do in a classroom environment and how we would need to take that into a remote context. Compromises around quantity. Quantity tends to be a bit of a default in our schools, and we needed to really dig deep and look at what it is that we wanted to make sure that we delivered, what were the skills, knowledge and understandings we wanted the students to develop, and be very, very critical about the quality versus the quantity. We needed to make sure that every adaptation that we made drew on a sense of creativity. So how could we creatively look at our pedagogical mindset? How could we creatively look at how we engaged our students in learning? How could we draw more on transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary learning? How could we find more real-world connections? How could we take students on a greater project-based journey? And how could we make sure, again, that assessment was being delivered, or opportunities for assessment were offered in a variety of different creative ways? And then the fourth principle that we looked at or drove our adaptations was the principle of compassion. So every adaptation that we made, we needed to know and understand that everybody's situation was very different, and that we were going to need to measure that well-being of the adaptation, the implementation of that adaptation, and that we would need to track and monitor it. But we would also need to make sure that we did that with open hearts and open minds and no judgment. So some of the adaptations that we made were around learning expectations. We modified learning expectations. We looked for evidence of learning over a 24-hour period of time rather than in lesson by lesson blocks. We modified our schedules 3 times through the journey, finding different balance between asynchronous and synchronous learning. We modified how we communicated with parents. We created more transparency in the planning process so parents could access that. We simplified our language so parents could access that. We modified our assessment, much greater focus on formative assessment, feedback on learning, written and oral feedback. We changed how we engaged with our families in terms of understanding where they were in place and time. So we rang every one of our families, we checked in with them, we troubleshooted for them their problems at home, and we also undertook a wellbeing survey with them to find out how they were in time and place and how their children were, and then looked at how we could implement different strategies through their homeroom classes or by grade level or through the leadership team so that we could bring and connect our community back into the learning. And I think a lot of the adaptations that we made were very successful. We didn't get them all right to start off with, but what we did manage to do is we did manage to maintain about a 96% engagement rate across our school community.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. Through the 10 weeks or 11 weeks that we were in a remote work and distance learning environment. And yes, that fluctuated across grade levels at different times, but the quality of learning, the quality of understanding that our students could demonstrate back to us, the quality of their engagement from our perspective was just one of the greatest highlights and takeaways from the whole situation. And we've discovered members of our community who have absolutely thrived working in a distance learning model. Students who have gone above and beyond anything we would often see on a daily basis, such as one of our grade 5 students who in the first 2 weeks of being in distance learning asked her homeroom teacher for some feedback on a piece of writing. And he opened the document to discover she'd written a 127-page novel, and just some of the great excitement that has come out of the adaptations that we made. And I guess they were really based on providing balance and time, a bit of space for creativity.
That's brilliant. Kim, what you just shared with me, and I've taken down notes actually, and I'll show you later how many pages I took as you speak. I was busy scribbling as you speak. The 4 C's that you talk about, that is really so well thought through, and your 4 area of domain you want to focus on adaptation is really very systematically organized, and execution-wise with the 4 C's is just remarkable. And what I love about it is the people, the empathy, the compassion that you put into the whole thought process is not mechanical anymore, even though it's online. It's all about the people. empathy and compassion. That is remarkable. Congratulations on that, Kim. Thank you for sharing. It's really amazing.
Thank you. It's been a very interesting learning journey for our school community. But what was important for us is for us to hold on to the values. And
Yes.
one of our clear values statements as a school is that our children's well-being comes first. And that's how we entered into the journey and the challenge that we had to face.
That's beautiful. I mean, but the values that you have is so real, is so down to earth, but it's so true. It's all about the people, the well-being of these people. What are the lessons that you say that is learned throughout this period that is valuable to be shared with the people here?
Oh, hundreds of lessons. I think I'd start with the importance of being grateful.
Sure.
I think one of the greatest lines of conversation that we've consistently stuck to as a school community is what we're grateful for. And, I think that helps us be able to reflect and evaluate on the amount of room and the amount of space that we have to actually be creative through this scenario. I think one of the other greatest learnings is the importance of mindset, knowing that when we face challenge, we need to focus on what we can control and evaluate that against what we can't, and look for opportunities right from the start of the experience. Because you mentioned at the beginning that out of crisis does come opportunity. And if we are able to look for those, find them, and collectively harness them, then there's a lot of growth that can come out of these experiences. I think the other piece that we learned was very much about the different skills that our educators needed. So early in the journey, we tried to articulate with our faculty what the skills were that they were needing to deploy, because they do look different. There's a much higher level of technology and social media skills required.
Yeah.
Very different administrative and organisational skills required from our teaching community when they're working in a remote environment. And then, of course, we've already mentioned there's that whole pedagogical mindset. There's a shift in how we have to view and understand the teaching that we're doing. I think other lessons that we've learned is that collaboration can be more effective when it's occurring remotely. We've seen our team become stronger through this experience. We've seen cross-disciplinary teams become stronger. We've seen that result in much more interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary learning opportunities for our students. I think we've also learned that our students require space and flexibility to be creative, and that slack is important. And slack often gets sucked out of our working days and our school days.
That's true.
But we need to try and find ways to hold on to that as we move forward. We've learned that depth over breadth is very important, and that we can see evidence of high levels of student learning outcomes with depth. We don't necessarily need the breadth. For us, it has helped strengthen our approach through universal design for learning. So looking at how we collaboratively plan for grade levels rather than even classes, but for our grade levels, looking at all of the different needs that are in those cohorts, and then looking at the strengths and the skills that we have across our teams to be able to then guide and support the learning of specific individuals and specific groups. Another great learning for us has been how this opportunity has taught us new ways to connect and communicate with our families, with our parents, and that can lead to much, much stronger relationships between home and school. Our faculty, I mean, my gosh, I have such great admiration and respect for the team that I've been working with. I know that they worked so incredibly hard, and at that time, during that time, and still now, they are, lifelong learners. They've learned new technologies to facilitate learning. They've developed different collaboration skills. They have diversified assessment strategies and the skills that they use to assess student learning. They've learned and shown us the power of the team and how important it is that we all pull together and drive towards a common cause. We've got teachers who have stepped up and become tech champions and who have supported each other. Our teaching team has learnt a lot more about what authentic student agency can look like in learning, and how agency isn't just all about voice and choice. It's actually about that ownership of learning, and it's about having students who've got really strong self-efficacy. And I think that it's also helped us learn and maybe not a new learning, a remembering that the heart of a school is the people. It's not the location or the facilities, it's the people. And if we can keep our community connected in a remote environment, then there is strength of community, and that it's so important for us to invest in those relationships in our school community, and they can be executed both face-to-face and in a remote environment.
I love it.
And of course, learnings, our students, they are the greatest amazing celebration.
Wow.
Their determination, their resilience, the ownership they've taken of the learning. We've seen an increase in achievement and
That's
educational
fantastic.
success across our cohorts. We've seen such a rapid growth of self-management and self-regulation and media literacy skills. All of a sudden, these young people are having to navigate their own days with some guidance from mum and dad. And
Awesome.
it's you've certainly seen we've seen a lot of persistence, and I think we've learnt so much more about our students. We've been in their lounges with them, and we've been in their homes, and they've been learning alongside their parents, and we've been in there with them. And I think this journey has helped open up those doorways so that our community can connect on another level. In fact, it's helped, I think, guide us in terms of a number of things that we would certainly continue to do quite differently in the future.
Simply amazing lessons learned that you shared with us, and that's really quite a bit that you shared. Really appreciate, and I love it when you talk about the heart of any operations, be it a school or organization. It is actually the people, definitely the people that makes the difference. So I love it when you place emphasis on people, whether it's teachers, educators, parents, or students or families. That's exactly what we are here for, right? It's for these people. So thank you, Kim, for leading that change and leading that whole journey that you and your team has gone through, helping the community and the students and parents to transition from a face-to-face learning environment to an online learning environment in such a short period of time. Yet so much has been achieved in that really short period of time. So remarkable achievement, and congratulations again, Kim, for that.
Thank you. It has been a quite phenomenal time. I think what's exciting is what comes next. It truly is.
Yes, yes, which is coming to my next question. I think what we have seen, the shift that you have made in the transition, what do you think will happen in post-COVID-19 for the education industry? What do you think will make big changes, transformation in the education space?
Well, I think the first obvious change is that this experience has really required our educators and our leaders to determine how to deliver engaging learning and opportunities via online modalities. And I think that has just accelerated a professional learning journey that cannot be forgotten. Teachers can't forget what's happened.
Yes.
They can't forget what they've now learned. And our students and our parents can't forget either. They've been brought into our learning journey in a very different way. And I think that those things cannot be left behind. The level of transparency that has been there in our own community with the weekly planning documents that parents have access to. We can't undo that now. Parents have been able to step right into that learning experience and be part of it. So I think that those shifts and adaptations that we've made are things that we're going to need to now reevaluate and work out how we hold on to. I think that my greatest hope is that the education industry uses this opportunity and leverages it to accelerate the change that's already started globally. There's progressive schools globally that have been challenging the norm in many, many different ways.
Yes.
And they've been embedding innovation into the fabric of their school culture, and they've been taking risks. We have schools in our organisation here in the Qatar Foundation, including Qatar Academy Sidra, that are exploring with different frameworks for leadership and different ways that we can create empowerment with students. The school I'm going to, International School of Ho Chi Minh City, is very well known for its innovation and for its progressive learning. And my hope is that we can, as a collective education industry, now really openly embrace those concepts of progressive learning and leverage them across a very, very broad scale. Because I believe all of our children globally should have that right to be able to access learning where they gain empowerment. I think that some of the other things that we're going to need to be aware of post-COVID-19 or still midst COVID-19.
Still, yes.
I think it's going to be with us for a little while.
Yeah.
Is I think that as schools, we're going to need to be prepared to deploy trauma-informed teaching and learning. And I believe that we're going to need to really consider organisational trauma and be responsive to that. The adaptations that we've made may be sustainable, some of them may not be. And as we've made those adaptations and as people have been socially distanced, I think that we're going to have a process of trauma that we're going to need to work through in our school communities. I hope that the education industry will leverage collective intelligence a lot more, and that our schools will continue to build and strengthen the gains that we can create or have from the power of the team. I believe that everything that can be made digital will be made digital. I don't think that's going to go away. We've now learned a whole new way of working. And I think that there's going to be an increased need for skills in digital leadership. And I think as leaders of schools, we're going to need to deploy digital leadership in different ways to reach our communities.
I like that.
I believe.
Digital leadership.
I think there's many things personally I've learned from this experience in terms of my own leadership, which I will do differently, I think, from this day forward. Ways that I've been able to create more transparency and accessibility to what's happening on a broader school-wide picture for the community that I don't think I had necessarily been doing as well as what I could have beforehand. So there's a lot of ways that I think that as digital leaders we can really reach into our communities much more.
Certainly, yeah. With a digital leadership, as you rightly put, and with a mindset of leveraging collective intelligence worldwide, there's so much power in that shift and transformation in the education industry. We'll just take another completely different level of acceleration post-COVID-19, and I hope to see that happening too.
I do too.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be a lot of factors which add to that. I think that there's going to be a lot of business model acceleration that occurs. And I think our schools, which are all business models of their own, are going to feel that. So I think there's going to be a change in school business models to focus more on local opportunities. We know that at the moment there's a feeling of deglobalization that's happening, and I think that that will refine its balance and it will return. But I think that schools will need to look at how that they can put more focus on those local opportunities. Our teachers are going to, they can't forget what they've done, so I think there's going to be a lot of new ways of working. It's
going to have a lot of fun and creative ways being proposed or suggested or even worked on moving forward, right? And we're all looking forward to see that. Fantastic.
I think, and talking of fun and creative ways, I hope that we hold on to slack, that we hold on to that time for creativity, because I truly believe that as we move forward, roles in schools, roles and responsibilities are going to become less linear, that there's an opportunity for us to create changes in leadership frameworks so that they're more synergetic and that our leaders are taking on roles and responsibilities which are more project-based, and that they're using really agile methodologies to be able to engage in those projects. So using design thinking and innovation and entrepreneurship so that those projects in the school communities have the ultimate capacity to deal with uncertainty, because uncertainty is going to keep happening and disruption is going to keep happening. I mean, we're in a complex world which is just filled with it.
It is, even more so now. Yeah, you are absolutely right. So we do need to be prepared for the uncertainty ahead of us, the challenges in front of us. How do we overcome all that with an agile mindset, open mindset, and allow slack? I like that. Really, that gives a lot of space and also time to encourage creativity, which is very much lacking in some education base. So I really like that. Thank you, Kim. Thank you for sharing. Kim, as we progress towards different phases of COVID-19, what would your new normal gonna be look like? How would your new normal look like?
Yes, first of all, I would say that I hope it's not going to be normal. I know this concept of new normal is sort of thrown around, but I don't think there's anything about what comes next, which is what we know is normal. I hope that as we move forward, that there is a greater adoption of high flex studio models for learning and working, which are structured whilst unstructured environments where both our educators and our students are empowered in a learning process. And I think that there is wide opportunities there to be able to leverage more flexibility between the synchronous and asynchronous environments, whether that be in a physical campus or not in a physical campus. And I think that if we head down a path where we can explore these high flex studio environments for working and for learning, that we need to be really clear still with what our expectations and baseline outcomes need to be. We need to be able to embrace the concept of having a lot of flexibility on how we get there. So a lot of flexibility on how our teachers achieve what they need to achieve within their roles and responsibilities, and a lot of flexibility with our students about how they achieve what their responsibilities are. I'd like to see us hold on to much more creating and making. So looking at how on a much wider scale, beyond the walls of one school, that we can ultimately reframe assessment modalities and that we can really look for evidence of understanding and evidence of mastery within our student populations, and that we can recognise and celebrate that, and that potentially our young people can also pathway with mastery at the core. I believe that in this post-COVID world, or mid-COVID, post-COVID world, that technology becomes something which is just much more part of how we operate. I think the cross-generational response and familiarity with technology has limited to some degree the extent that it's really been used to enhance teaching and learning. It's certainly limited perception around how it can enhance relationship building. And I think those are pieces that, now that we've gone through this experience, we don't need to be afraid that technology is not a vehicle that we can use to build relationships, and that we do understand that there are just so many different ways that we can inspire, challenge, engage, empower our communities in the process of learning. And I guess, the last few pieces that I would really hope to be able to see is that ultimately our schools are there as social constructs, and that their first and most strongest focus is on creating just meaningful purpose for learners, allowing them to build strong mastery, allowing them to build autonomy, allowing them to have ownership over the process of learning, so that ultimately they can be lifelong learners. Because in a world of ongoing disruption, we have to be lifelong learners, all of us do. And I hope that our schools can walk away from some of those barriers and boundaries that we put around what a schoolhouse needs to look like, so that our communities can traverse across multiple environments, digital and physical, a lot more. And I know that this isn't an uncommon feature for many schools, but many schools believe that well-being sits right at the heart of their school communities. I hope that that continues to be a growing wave of movement that happens in education, where well-being is at the heart, and that we focus on the effective skill development of our students, and that we build really our communities' social and emotional skills, so that they have a really strong sense of who they are themselves, and that they have a really strong sense of how to build relationships with others and with the environment, and that each person in our community is able to be a change maker as they continue to navigate whatever disruptions come in the future.
Thank you, Kim. That is really a lot in terms of your sharing for the new normal. We really appreciate that. Very valuable insights. Thank you, Kim, for sharing. We are coming to a very important question of our podcast on SkyGems podcast. Kim, we'd like to hear from you. What would your message or messages be for the future generations?
My greatest message would be to embrace crisis, and to embrace this crisis as an opportunity to really reconfigure the world. And as some of our old models of working become obsolete and new opportunities start to appear, I'd like our future generations to embrace those new concepts, but to consistently evaluate those new concepts against values, and ensure that ultimately values drive action, universal values, but also the values of the school communities, or the communities that they're part of, the organisations that they're part of. I also think that our future generations need to make sure that they are prepared for ongoing disruption. They need to prepare themselves for ongoing volatility and uncertainty and complexity and ambiguity, and that they're going to need to be adaptable and agile, because that adaptability and agility will be the tools that they need to be resilient, flourish and thrive. So focus on mastery, focus on skills, keep values and well-being at the heart, and I believe that our future generations will be able to guide us through what comes next.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for that wonderful message for our future generations. Truly valuable, truly insightful of what is needed for all of us to hear. Thank you, Kim, once again for your time. Such an honor and privilege to have you on our episode of SkyGem podcast. Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. Take care and stay safe.
Likewise, take care and stay safe, Kim, and look forward to seeing you in person one day. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode at SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1 on the topic of how COVID-19 transformed the education industry. If you enjoyed today's episode and you love the vision and mission of SkyGems Academy, can you please help us to convince others to tune in to SkyGems Academy Podcast too? Please kindly subscribe to SkyGems Academy podcast. Please also kindly leave a quick review and rate SkyGems Academy podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor.fm, Breaker, and various SkyGems Academy's podcast channels. That would mean the world to us, so thank you so much for your support. Visit our website at www.skygemsacademy.com to find out more about our distinguished speakers and about SkyGems Academy. We appreciate you and your continuous support. Thank you for tuning in to SkyGems Academy podcast. High five and peace out.